They are the players. They have been for over 200 years, going back to Weishaupt and the Illuminati and the Napoleonic Wars that they profited so greatly from. They are at the top of this Illuminati New World Order pyramid. As far as I've ever learned, the Rossells are the highest human rank in this hierarchy of warfare.
Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. Sean from SGT Report here. So glad to have you back, and also glad to have back on the line James Perloff. We are going to be dissecting the false flag gas attack in Syria. We're going to be talking about Putin, World War III, Trump and the deep state, and so much more. James, welcome back.
Thank you, Sean, for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Always a pleasure to be with you. All right, guys, we're going to jump right in the deep end. Here is Vladimir Putin from just 5 days ago saying what he believes is going on in Syria, in the Syrian town of Idlib with this gas attack.
Now, coming back to the incident in Syria, we've seen earlier calls by the Syrian government for the international community to investigate their claims of the rebels' use of chemical weapons. Unfortunately, this has not been done. We have to rely on common sense, and here's what it tells us. Syria's government troops are on the offensive and have surrounded the opposition in several areas of the country. In these conditions, to play into the hands of those who are constantly calling for military intervention would be an incredibly ridiculous thing to do, especially on the eve of the UN mission's arrival. It defies any logic. That's why I'm convinced that it's nothing but a provocation on the part of those who want to drag other countries into the Syrian conflict.
Well, James, you know what? I've got so much more to play. I'm going to let you speak here, obviously. You've got a lot to say as well. Putin today coming out saying specifically Idlib was a false flag attack, and we have learned that more are coming. I'm going to quote him here. We have reports from multiple sources that false flags like this one, and I cannot call it otherwise, are being prepared in other parts of Syria, including the southern suburbs of Damascus. They plan to plant some chemical there and accuse the Syrian government of an attack. James, in a minute, I'm going to play another clip for you, which will prove that all of the chemicals were removed from Syria by the UK, the UN, and the United States back in June of 2014. But that won't dissuade Trump and the deep state from saying there was a gas attack and Assad was behind it. I'm so disgusted by this. Everybody in the alt media is disgusted by it, and many on the left as well. This is not just a right-left issue. This is a lies issue. The American people are fed up with these lies, but they want to take us into Syria and they want to push World War III, James.
Right, and I think I'd just like to mention at the outset, and I'm sure the vast majority of our listeners know this, but you and I are not anti-Trump people. Historically, we opposed Hillary. You've done so much on Pizzagate and spirit cooking, and if you go to my website, the articles I have on Hillary Clinton, a collection of anti-Hillary cartoons and memes, and our post on the rigging of the debates in favor of Hillary. So we were hoping for the best from Donald Trump. And in the early days of his administration there, Sean, I was sitting on the fence. I saw some good things he did, like axe the TPP, reverse those horrible transgender policies. And I think perhaps the thing that made me most hopeful about Trump was the fact that the mainstream media was attacking him ruthlessly every day as they had before the election, and there was still no let up. And so that made me think, well, I guess, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, the enemy here being the mainstream media. But there are also some red flags about Trump before these Syrian airstrikes, which I want to mention. Just there's a lead up to this. In Trump's background, although had been talking about making America great again, there are a lot of Zionist connections there. Going back to Roy Cohn as his attorney, his friendship with Benjamin Netanyahu, which was so great that he made a campaign election commercial for Israeli television for Netanyahu, who, as you know, he invited to the White House very soon after his inauguration. There are the Zionist advisors he surrounded himself with. If you've ever seen Brother Nathaniel's video, which he made a year before the election, called Trump's Deck of Jewish Cards, he warned specifically about Jared Kushner and Carl Icahn, the Jewish billionaire Zionist who bailed out Trump when he went bankrupt with Trump Entertainment. And now we see those two men, Jared Kushner and Carl Icahn, as senior and special advisors to the president. Also, he's got Abraham Berkowitz as a special assistant. He is the first cousin of the former president of AIPAC. His ambassador, Trump's ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, is a hardcore pro occupation guy, so the worst news for the Palestinians possible. Trump has also said he'll move the embassy from Tel Aviv to our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is a big part of the Rothschild plan, that whole deal with building the third temple. And at his inauguration, right immediately after his inauguration speech, the invocation was given. The first invocation, first time ever at a presidential inauguration, was given by an Orthodox rabbi, Marvin Heyer, who spoke of Zion in Jerusalem. And that was certainly a signal to the Zionists that Trump was in their camp. And then since the inauguration, we've seen things such as sanctions against Iran, the resumption of drone strikes, and sending 400 troops to Syria. These were kind of like moves in the direction of being a neocon, continuing the neocon approach to the Middle East. But the sea change, the big transitional moment came for all of us in alternative media when he launched the airstrikes on April the 6th on Syria.
Yeah, well, all right, so anybody listening, and it doesn't matter to me anymore, I can't monetize anything. Guys, anybody wondering, the trend has continued. I'm making less than $5 a day on YouTube, even though I'm in good standing as YouTube partner, so don't worry, there won't be any ads on this one either, and that's just fine because thankfully I have some wonderful, wonderful people, more than 700 now, 750, stepping up to help support SGT Report on Patreon. Can't tell you how much that means to us. But here's the thing. When we talk about the Jews in the cabinet and the Zionists in the cabinet and all these people associated so closely with Trump, that's not anti-Semitic to say. It's just a fact. And it needs to be said. As I said on April 6th, when Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted out, quote, "Israel fully supports President Trump's decision," end quote. And that's, of course, to bomb Syria. I tweeted, "Of course you do. More American treasure for Israel. Just endless Zionist wars." And the other thing I tweeted that same day was, "To those who feel duped by Trump, I'm sorry, I'm with you. Obama couldn't sell war in Syria to the people, so they gave us real Donald Trump." That's how I feel right now, James, because either he's being duped by these deep state Zionists or we are, right? I mean, he can't be this stupid. He must know what I'm about to play, because if I know it, if my friend Jake over at End Times News Report knows it, if our friends Melissa and Aaron over at TruthStream Media know it, if Liberty Blitzkrieg's Mike Krieger knows it, if the whole world knows what I'm about to play is true, then how is it that Donald Trump doesn't know that this is what the BBC reported on June 23rd, 2014?
Last of Syria's chemical weapons shipped out. The article says this, quote, "The last of Syria's declared chemical weapons have been shipped out of the country for destruction," the international watchdog OPCW says. OPCW stands for the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, okay? So the article goes on to say this, quote, "The chemical cargo is being shipped to a specially modified U.S. naval vessel, the MV Cape Ray. The destruction of the most toxic agents will take place on board at an undisclosed location somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea. The remaining chemicals will be destroyed in Finland, the U.S., and Britain."
All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, James. But, when they say the remaining chemicals will be destroyed at an undisclosed location in the Mediterranean Sea, if all of the chemical weapons were shipped out and destroyed, how is it that Assad carried out this attack now?
Well, clearly he didn't. And we're going to go over reasons for that. And actually, our original intent when we scheduled this show was to talk about, I've got this new post on vaccines. It's called Vaccination Visuals. But this is the topic of the day. It's critical. And actually, Sean, I've made a list of 10 reasons why these Syria attacks were a bad idea. So, and the first one goes to your point about, did Trump just get swayed or not? And clearly he was not just swayed. He knew this was a bad idea. And I'm sure you've seen some of these. This is from a publication online called Middle East Eye, but they've got Trump's own tweets from 2013 about what he thought about the chemical weapons attack back then. And here's what he tweeted on 29 August 2013, quote, "What will we get for bombing Syria besides more debt and a possible long-term conflict? Obama needs congressional approval," something he didn't just seek now, right? His next tweet, Trump speaking, quote, this is 2 September 2013, quote, "If the U.S. attacks Syria and hits the wrong targets, killing civilians, There will be worldwide hell to pay. Stay away and fix broken U.S., unquote. By the way, some of those Tomahawk missiles did hit civilian targets. They didn't all hit the airbase. In fact, most of them did not. Next quote from Trump on Twitter. Quote, the only reason President Obama wants to attack Syria is to save face over his very dumb red line statement, do not attack Syria, fix the USA, unquote. I'll give you one more. Obviously, we won't do all 13, but the next one is, quote, again, to our very foolish leader, do not attack Syria. If you do, many very bad things will happen from that fight, and the U.S. gets nothing, unquote. So Donald Trump knew, and that was the same claim at that time, alleged sarin gas attack being made. He knew it was a bad idea to attack then. So there's no question. He's not being swayed. He knows himself that this is not the right thing to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, fortunately, he hit evidently a fairly deserted airbase. I mean, I don't know that they even did that much damage. So I'm not sure how much of this is posturing. They're playing a very delicate game here with Russia because Putin is dead serious about taking this to the next level. He will not be pushed into the corner by this neocon Zionist regime that wants to push him into a corner. So he's going to fight back. So I wonder why they hit that particular airstrip. They didn't do that much damage. Was this really symbolic more than anything? But the bottom line is, symbolic or not, we know what the neocons want. It goes all the way back to the Cheney, Rumsfeld, Bush, Zygmunt Brzezinski dynasty, right? Which is they want pipelines through Afghanistan. They want pipelines through Syria. They want pipelines. They want to control the oil in all of these regions. They want to dismantle the Middle East and turn it into a hellhole, order out of chaos, so they can control the whole thing. But look what that's got them. That's got them nothing but chaos in Libya. It's got them nothing but chaos and lost American treasure in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, these people don't know when enough is enough. I mean, I guess enough is enough for them is when the nukes start to fly, James.
I think that's ultimately where this game is headed. They're constantly making Assad and Putin out to be horrific villains, and that usually does indicate a lead up to war. And if I can go historical on you for just a moment, back at the time of the Spanish-American War, the villain du jour was Spain, right? So here you got a picture of Spain with a bloody dagger and its hands on the graves of the sailors on the USS Maine, even though there's never been any evidence that Spain sunk the Maine. It's trampling the American flag. And of course, what was really going on was the banks just wanted to get control of the sugar industry in Cuba, which is the largest sugar industry in the world at that time, which they got after the war was over. But then you move it up to just a few years later, and the ape has become the Germany, destroy this mad brute. He's got the Kaiser's helmet on, he's got a damsel in distress, and there were all these atrocity stories. By the way, speaking of sarin gas, at the time of the Spanish-American War, they made up, in the yellow press, William Randolph Hearst made up these stories like the Spaniards were throwing Cubans to sharks. That was all fake. During World War I, they said that German soldiers were cutting the hands off Belgian children. After the war, historians, whatever, found out nobody had ever seen that. And how about, just to get closer to the present time, how about the first Gulf War of '91 and the incubator baby stories? There's always these fake atrocity stories. So you have to, when you look at history and you know the context, you know that again and again they use fake atrocities and they build up hatred for the enemy, as in those pictures. The enemy du jour right now, the enemies of du jour right now are Assad and Putin, and it certainly would suggest, with all the stuff about Russia supposedly hacking the election despite presenting no evidence, the constant depiction of Assad as a dictator and a mass murderer and Putin as an aggressor are leading us, trying to get us into a war psychosis.
Yeah, they're trying to whipsaw us into more. Well, you know what? It's not working. We're all so fed up. I mean, do you remember that Obama could not get the war to trigger in Syria? It's like my tweet. They tried to sell us the war in Syria with Obama, and the American people wouldn't stand for it.
Right.
I mean, there was an uprising on the left and the right. Right. So now they give us Trump, and it all happens so quickly. They didn't give us any time to react. They didn't go and try to make the case in the mainstream media because it wouldn't have worked. And now they've got a new figurehead here for the United States government in the form of Trump, which was, I think, meant, in this case, that was going to be used to get the right to stand down. The right's not standing down. People are ticked. Yeah,
and I'm glad that they're ticked. And you're right about one of the other 10 points that I was planning to make, and I will make now, was the haste of the decision. if in fact somebody is accused of something, you don't just go out and lynch him. You give him a hearing, you give him a trial, you hear both sides of the story. Now, obviously, Trump can't arrange a jury trial over this sarin gas, but the least he could have done before he launched missiles would have been to ask an international commission to come in, of people from different countries, somebody nonpartisan, to investigate, talk to witnesses, find out what really happened. And I know that some of his diehard supporters will say, well, he had an intelligence briefing. And I say, big deal. Look at all the intelligence briefings that said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. That led us into a war that cost trillions of dollars, over 500,000 Iraqi lives, lasted well over 10 years. And what did it get us? Nothing. And so the idea that you can just launch missiles before you have all the facts is absolutely insane, and just is evidence, very convincing evidence, that we have in our current president, Donald Trump, just another neocon, another John McCain, Bush, Obama, Lindsey Graham, Hillary Clinton neocon who's going to push for more war in the Middle East.
Well, yeah, and as far as intelligence briefings go, the intelligence briefings that John F. Kennedy got back during the Cuban Missile Crisis. They were intelligence briefings by the Joint Chiefs that said, nuke them. We can't stand for this. We got to nuke them. Let's go to nuclear war with Russia. And the only reason that didn't happen is because John F. Kennedy had the presence of mind and a soul good enough to pick up the phone and talk to Khrushchev. So they had a conversation, and it pulled the world back from the brink of World War III. And I feel like these intelligence briefings, the Joint Chiefs now, probably telling Trump the same thing. Let's just go to war. Let's impose a no-fly zone in Syria. We won't let those Ruskies fly. Guess what? You think Putin's going to stand for that? We'll be in a shooting war in no time, James. Everybody is absolutely outraged about this, and they need to be. Because you know what? And I'll play that soundbite from Mike Adams right now, because here's what happens if we're not outraged, if we don't stand up, if we don't put this government back in its place. Here's what's going to happen. James, I'm sure you heard about this just the other day when that poor man was torn off the United Airlines flight, even though he had paid for a seat. You recall that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've seen the footage, and it's getting quite a bit of attention on social media.
Well, it ought to, and I hope that United Airlines is sued into oblivion. I hope they lose $10 million over that, because I'll tell you what, I would love to sit on that man's jury. I don't care what the fine print of that stinking ticket said. They do not have the right to assault their own passengers. They do not have the right to do... Look, we all go through TSA now, and we're made to feel like Nazi prisoners in a prison camp just getting through TSA. And God forbid you get pulled aside and get the more advanced pat-down now, the more invasive pat-down. Have you heard about this? What used to be 90 seconds is now 4 minutes. And they're going to stick their hands up in your butt crack. If you're a woman, they're going to go right up under your breasts, and they're going to feel you out for about 5 minutes. I watched this happen to my son. These people are out of control. And here's the problem with the United Airlines assault of its own passenger. Nobody on that plane got up and screamed bloody murder. They should have all marched off that plane, and no one did. Now imagine what happens if the American people stand for more of this crap going on in Syria. But here's Mike Adams.
Most of the other passengers just sat there, quietly, obedient little sheeple, while the police thugs came and took away their fellow passenger. They said nothing because they didn't want to be targeted and smashed in the face and dragged down the aisle.
They didn't want to suffer the Orwellian boot stomping on the human face forever. So guess what? They all sat there. The man got pulled off the plane. And then you know what's really funny, James? They all got pulled off the plane anyway so that that stinking airline could go in and clean up the man's blood that splattered all over the place. This is what we're talking about. This was a perfect example, a great metaphor for what we are now going through with Syria and more of this false flag terror, James. Either we as a collective people stand up and say, hell no, not one more false flag act of terror. Either we stand up and we do it now, or this will continue ad nauseum until they get their World War III.
And they'll be trying to suppress us from saying that. So let's really go at it. And we saw this man's rights suppressed. Our rights come from the Constitution, and that I'm just going to segue to another point. This was the third reason why the Syria airstrikes were bad. Here's a quote. You've been quoting some good people there for those clips. This is from Rand Paul, his tweet. Quote, "The president needs congressional authorization for military action as required by the Constitution," unquote. And Sean, if you look at the Constitution, making war is only delegated to Congress. The president is the commander-in-chief if we go to war, but he doesn't have the right to start a war. Now, some people might say, well, he didn't really start a war. All he did was launch 59 missiles. Well, Sean, if somebody launched 59 missiles on America, we consider that an act of war. He committed an act of war, which he has no constitutional right to do. And if people do think he has the right to launch missiles at his own discretion without the consent of the people of the Congress, then by that logic, he has the right to launch a first strike on Russia with nuclear missiles and start World War III and incinerate the planet. So I hope the people get reined in who are still supporting this among his diehard supporters. And you know what? I voted for Donald Trump. But I'll tell you right now, I don't stand by the president, right or wrong. When he's wrong, and this was really wrong.
Yeah, well, the other thing that's wrong is the fact that, when Eisenhower warned us about this, as everybody listening knows, the rise of the military-industrial complex will eat this country. He warned us about that in the 50s, and here we sit, right, with Tomahawk makers' stock Raytheon rising after U.S. launches missiles. Here's how much it costs to replace each of those 59 Tomahawk missiles that Trump launched against Syria unconstitutionally on the basis of a false flag gas attack. $1.4 million each. I thought they were more than that. Is that right? I guess that's right.
I've heard different figures, but it's a huge amount of money that could have been spent to make America great again and fix our infrastructure or help out disabled vets, etc. It was certainly something in the range of, I've heard, 80, 90 million total.
But the point here is that we have a fascist government. When the government is in bed with these public companies or privately owned companies, in the case of so many of these military contractors, but when the government is in bed with corporations and there's a revolving door, it is the epitome of fascism. So it's no wonder we get these wars without end. There's a benefit, right? The people who are involved in the government have a conflict of interest. Look at Rex Tillerson and his ties to big oil. I mean, my God. I'm preaching to the choir here, James. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Yeah, Tillerson just announced today that Assad must go, which is exactly what Hillary and McCain have been saying. So where's the distinction? Where's that new regime we were supposed to have? But I'm going to give you a fourth reason now why the attack on Syria was not justified. We were not attacked. The purpose of the U.S. military from its inception has been to defend America. We were not attacked. The purpose of the U.S. military is not to go around and kick ass and to attack somebody we don't like for their actions. So this was one more reason why this was not a appropriate action on the part of President Trump. And the fact that we're not attacked also, I also want to bring that up because people are mentioning this as one of the reasons why the attack was not justified. We were not attacked. It makes me wonder if Netanyahu is now thinking, okay, you say you weren't attacked, I can arrange that. And we could perhaps see sometime soon an attack on American soil, some kind of big 9/11 type explosion. And this time they'll have Syrian passports getting left unburned. And then they'll say, you said you weren't attacked. Guess what? You just were. They can arrange a false flag here too. But to date, we have not been attacked by Syria. By the way, I go to church with people from Syria. They're good people. They love America and they love Assad.
That plays right into what Putin was saying, early here in the start of the broadcast when I played the clip from Putin saying, look, we think this was a false flag. And now in this breaking news from the breaking news from Zero Hedge, as we're having this conversation today on Tuesday, he believes that more false flags are coming, probably now more directly in Damascus. So we won't be surprised if they come in Syria, and we certainly won't be surprised if we see false flags here in the United States. And just one more thing on the Department of Defense. You're absolutely right. We are not supposed to be a country that is going into offensive wars of aggression without cause and without constitutional checks and balances and approval. What once was called the Department of War was wisely renamed at the urging of the father of propaganda, Edward Bernays, the Department of Defense. So everybody can just sit back. This is just the Department of Defense defending the homeland. Seems like maybe a little bit more is going on here than the defense of the homeland, James. Yeah,
and that word change reminds me of Orwell, where the secret police were called the Ministry of Love. Let me mention a fifth reason why these attacks were a bad idea. And this goes into what you were mentioning and what Putin was saying was just the contradictions. As you pointed out, we'd already certified that the man had no chemical weapons. And he'd been fighting ISIS for years. And, he never used chemical weapons against them. Why, after a big victory in Aleppo, and he never uses them against his military opponents, why would he suddenly, out of the blue, decide to drop chemical weapons on to his civilian population, which loves him, by the way? I think it was 88% voted for him in their elections. Why would he do something that would invite an airstrike? And, we should mention what happened the last time. The last time, Seymour Hersh investigated this, and the New York Times had to back off the claim that Assad had been responsible for that 2013 alleged attack. Let me show you an interesting headline from 2013, the Daily Mail, British newspaper, online. U.S.-backed plan to launch chemical weapons attack on Syria and blame it on Assad regime. And it says leaked emails from defense contractor refers to chemical weapons, saying the idea is approved in Washington. So right then, they were plotting to blame a false chemical weapons attack on Assad. Seymour Hersh demonstrated that the chemical weapons were actually sent by with Hillary Clinton's approval from the Libyan arsenal to the Syrian rebels. And I also want to mention this. There is a former colonel in the DIA. I don't know if you saw this, Defense Intelligence Agency. His name is Patrick Lang. You can look this up on a search engine. He says that the U.S. did know that Assad had no chemical weapons. He says what really happened was that Assad's Air Force hit a weapons depot of the rebels. It was their chemical weapons that blew up. It was their chemical weapons, but it wasn't sarin gas. He's pointing out that if it was sarin gas, then the first responders would have been wearing gloves and hazmat suits. So obviously it was not sarin gas. The whole thing is bogus. So it's bogus. It is a false flag. It is a false claim. And if there were any chemical weapons involved, they didn't come from Assad. They came from the people that were supporting.
Yeah, you got that right. And I'm going to tell you this. I don't know what your top 10 list is here, James. We didn't discuss that before we started recording. But I hope you get to the white helmets, because I don't know if you've seen any of these white helmets. I'm calling them now mannequin challenge videos, because they absolutely make no sense. All right, I'll play one right here for you. Okay. So there you have a victim. There you have the white helmets, frozen like mannequins. As the camera circles and circles and oh, there's the cue. Now everybody's moving into action as they save this man. It's just unbelievable stuff. But I'm going to tell you one other thing, James. I also tweeted back on April 8th the fact that here's how you know the U.S. attack on Syria is just more Zionist New World Order bullshit. Because CNN is singing Trump's praises, calling this a political win. They could not contain their glee when this happened, calling him presidential and calling this a defining moment in Trump's presidency, and literally singing his praises. Now anybody, and of course our listeners know, James, CNN is nothing more than CIA, State Department talking points. It's the literal, Mockingbird mainstream media. For them to sing Trump's praises tells anybody who's thinking exactly what's going on.
Sean, I'm so glad you brought that up, because if you don't mind, I mentioned we're recording this on Tuesday, but I watched CNN on Sunday evening, and their news anchor and their commentators were doing just what you said. They were speaking almost with reverence towards Trump, and they were talking about how he'd restored America's respect throughout the world. And I said for a moment, am I watching the right station here? Is this the same CNN that was going after Trump's throat like a pit bull day after day? And all of a sudden, they're on his side. And it's amazing to believe, but this was the sixth point I was going to make, that Trump is suddenly in with bad company. On the political side, he's suddenly in with Hillary Clinton, who called for airstrikes on Syrian air bases a few hours before Trump actually did it. So he went along with Hillary on that. And he's going along with John McCain. And speaking of the media and the politicians, I've got another little headline to show you. This is from USA Today from yesterday. Senator Lindsey Graham says He's encouraged by the Trump administration, so he's in with the neocons now. He's officially a neocon, and he's been accepted. And Sean, one thing just made me wonder: all this talk about this constant anti-Trump attacks and all the claims of Russia hacking the election. Now that, of course, he's attacked Russia's ally Syria. They won't be doing that. And it's almost like a carrot and a stick. Suddenly they're saying, good boy, we're going to show you how nice it is to be loved by the mainstream media. I don't know if it'll continue or not, but that's where we're in right now. And I've been seeing other people comment on what they've been seeing on other mainstream media outlets on social media that have been making the same remarks and observations.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. The friends that you want in Washington, D.C. at this point are named Paul. The last name's Paul. So maybe you can get a friend out of Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and that would tell me a lot more than if you become close friends or get an endorsement from the likes of a Zionist traitor like Lindsey Graham or John McCain, who you and I both know has met in that region with the Syrian rebels supported by the United States, the bad guys, the people that Putin wants to get rid of, that we all thought Trump was going to work with Putin to get rid of. But no, we're not going to see that now. It's going to be more of the United States versus Putin, as opposed to, as Trump said, we should work with Putin to rid the region of ISIS. We're not going to get that now, are we?
No, it's too bad he didn't stick with his original plan to work with Putin, who is the only world leader, along with Assad, who's talking sense right now about this Middle East situation. But this was reason number 7. This was a stupid move if we're supposed to be fighting Islamic extremism, which Trump has spoken of so often, because you probably saw the headlines that after the airstrike was launched on the Syrian airbase, ISIS launched a new offensive as a result of that in Syria. So we actually launched a flank attack on behalf of ISIS, the very guys Trump has been saying he's against all this time, the Islamic fundamentalists. And as I do, that in Syria, Assad protects the churches. If people don't believe that, look at the statements being made by Catholic and Orthodox leaders in favor of Assad. Look at the pictures of him and his wife being welcomed in the churches over there. That's all going to end if Daesh and al-Nusra and your white helmets take over. The Christian churches will be wiped out, and that's exactly what Israel and the Rothschilds want. We're on the wrong side. This was a stupid move. And I also want to mention one of the things stupid about it was of those 59 Tomahawk missiles, only 23 hit their targets, 36 missed. Some of them dropped on civilians, killing civilians. We're supposed to be doing this because we cared about the civilians' rights, so we killed civilians to help civilians. So we're talking about a move that is absolutely nonsense, but you won't hear this mentioned on CNN or any other mainstream media outlet.
No, you sure won't, but you'll hear it mentioned right here at SGT Report with author James Perloff. James, as we're speaking, I'm tweeting out this, recording a call with author James Perloff right now about this outrageous false flag gas attack in Syria. Zionists exposed. There it goes. I just sent it. All right, let's hear your next one, James.
Okay, number 8, double standard and hypocrisy. Now, Trump said that, Ivanka was crying and he just had to do something about these horrible pictures, some of which may have been fake, by the way. But my question is this. Okay, what about Yemen? There's millions of people at risk for starvation in Yemen. The Saudis are bombing Yemen constantly. They're bombing hospitals, airports. We've seen reports of people at weddings being massacred by just bombing civilians. And they're even using what look like tactical nukes. And their weapons, of course, are coming from the West, from NATO nations, from us. I'm sure you heard how Saudi Arabia got a big boost in weapons supplies after they made a $10 million donation to the Clinton Foundation. Where are Trump's tears for the starving and murdered children of Yemen if he's so concerned about human rights? And what about the people of Gaza? What about Netanyahu dropping phosphorus bombs over Gaza? And you've seen the pictures of the people with their skin burned off. That's an attack on civilians. Where is the outrage? Is he going to launch Tomahawk missiles on Israel to avenge that? Obviously, we have a total double standard here. Trump understands that. This is selective human rights considerations. It's reason number 8 why this bombing was an atrocious idea.
All right, well, I look forward to hearing reasons 9 and 10 here in just one second, but I'll just say this. Yes, it's an outrageous double standard because it's the Rothschild Zionist double standard, right? And it's the double standard that is going to tear this world in two unless people stand up and literally wage war against it, because these people are going to do to us in the United States the same thing that United Airlines did to that passenger. They're going to do the same thing that the Israelis do to the Palestinians. They're going to do the same thing that our nation, under that witch named Hillary Clinton when she was at the State Department, we saw, he's dead, right, to Gaddafi. This is the plan. If anyone thinks...
The plan for Assad, yeah.
Well, and it's the plan for us, we the people. If anybody thinks that we're going to, if anybody listening thinks that just because we're Americans, we're going to survive these UN Agenda 2030 policies that seek to destroy our way of life and reduce carbon emissions to zero by 2050 without giving us new technologies to replace the old ones, if you think that you're going to survive with your way of life intact against this Zionist Rothschild double standard, I've got news for you. It's time to wake up. Let's hear number 9, James.
Well, number 9 is that we are setting ourselves up for the Third World War. And I don't think they're quite ready to launch it. I'm sure many of your readers are familiar with the Rothschild plan for Greater Israel. It goes back to the Zionist Congress of 1897. And if you go to global research, look for global research, Greater Israel, they lay out Israel's plans for destabilizing all the countries around them. I think the only reason that Rothschild tolerates the United States existing this long is that he needs us. They need us to take out all of Israel's enemies, and they're just waiting for us to finish off Syria and Iran. And when they're gone, they don't need us anymore. And it's going to be goodbye USA. And their people are not in Russia anymore. They were during the Bolshevik days, but they don't need Russia either. So they won't mind a nuclear war. But that is the other thing that Trump has done, is that by launching missiles on a sovereign nation in an unprovoked attack under obviously false circumstances, he is putting us up against Putin. Putin has commitments in Syria, and he's not a man that you mess around with. And obviously, if you're instituting no-fly zones, and you're creating a potential for events that could lead to a Third World War. And don't forget the possibility of Israel pulling off with another 9/11 and blaming it on Russia this time as well. I believe, by the way, if you go to my website, jamesperloff.com, I've got an article called 9/11 and Beyond, and it talks about the evidence that we were nuked on 9/11 with low radiation weapons taking down the Twin Towers. And I do believe that the Pentagon, Shanksville, and the Twin Towers, as far as with the so-called airplane hits, were launched from an Israeli submarine. They had just commissioned their new Dolphin-class submarines, which could fire 4 missiles, and I think that we're basically hit with, there's more to it than that, of course, that occurred on 9/11, but I believe we may be in for another nuclear attack on a much larger scale. This time, Israel could blame it on Russia and really get a world war going. So that is reason number 9 why we should not make any moves, aggressive moves against Russia or our allies, is the risk of a Third World War.
Yeah, and for anybody listening to whom the 9/11 information might be new, it's a can of worms. There's about 1,000 things that call into question the viability of the official story, which is really poppycock. But look at World Trade Center 7 and NIST's inability to explain the collapse of that building. And since now we have a NIST whistleblower coming out saying that it was clear that that building was brought down by explosives. There's no other way to have done it. He also believes that is what happened to the first 2 towers. I just tell that to folks because, all our listeners, James, know that 9/11 was a false flag operation of some sort. But to those who don't, they just need to understand that whatever happened on 9/11, it was used to turn the United States into an imperialist state, a state of aggression, a state of nonstop aggression, and a state where we were, as Americans, in a constant state of fear, right? Because of the boogeyman around the corner, the next 9/11. That is what they've used to keep us in line, and it's exactly what worked. It's exactly why the people on that United Airlines flight basically stood down when they should have all been standing up, outraged, screaming at those cops, and they should have all gotten off that plane together. That's what we need to do from now on as Americans. We need to stand up and walk out of those types of situations together and have our voices heard. Because you know what? If they would have all marched off that plane together, James, that plane wouldn't have been going anywhere. It would not have been getting to Louisville, Kentucky, or wherever it was going on time anyway. And you know what? It didn't, because they beat the crap out of that man, and then they had to get everybody off the flight to clean up the blood. So it was late anyway. So nobody won in that situation. And you know what? The passengers on that plane lost because they didn't stand up for the rights of their fellow passengers. I'm going to keep coming back to that for a long time as a perfect metaphor for where we are as Americans. They have put us into a state of essentially emotional psychosis where we are afraid to stand up and do the right thing because we have been brainwashed because of events like 9/11. All right, let's hear number 10, James.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, 9/11 is what led to this police state, and you were talking earlier about the outrages of TSA, which, by the way, has never found one terrorist since 9/11 and all of its pat-downs.
No, but they've felt up thousands of boobs and stuck hands inside sides of on the sides of millions of crotches of men and women alike. So good
Probably
job.
caused a lot of cancer, too.
Good job, TSA.
But the 10th thing I wanted to mention, you and I did a show. The last show we did was about March the 15th, the Ides of March. And on that show, we were talking about all the things that intersected on March the 15th, the anniversaries. It was exactly to the day, the 100th anniversary of the downfall of the Tsar of Russia, who was the Rothschilds' greatest enemy. And March the 15th, we had the debt deadline expire, which we're going to be feeling that very soon, within a month now. We're going to be in danger of a government shutdown. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates that day, and there are all kinds of things that were happening on March the 15th. There's another anniversary that I want to point out, okay, in relevance to this Syrian airstrike, and that is America ended World War I exactly on April the 6th, 1917. So Trump bombs Syria, putting it at risk for entering a third world war exactly to the day that America, on the 100th anniversary of the day America declared war in World War I. So I feel we are definitely following this Rothschild calendar. We've talked about it before, all the anniversaries that fall this year. It's the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, of the Balfour Declaration, of the Schofield Reference Bible, which birthed Christian Zionism. It's the 50th anniversary of the bombing of the USS Liberty and the taking of Jerusalem. It's the 300th anniversary of the first Freemasonic Lodge being founded in London. And it's the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Catholic split. The Rothschilds have all kinds of anniversaries they're celebrating, and it appears that they're carrying out these events on these anniversary days. In particular, I was very impressed by Trump bombing Syria on the exact 100th anniversary to the day that we entered World War I. So I tweeted that with the words, nice timing, Rothschild.
You know, isn't it funny to you that really under every stone we turn over, historically speaking, every worm, every grub, every disgusting little creature we find leads us right back to the Rothschilds and Zionism?
That's the way it's turning out. And no matter what you look at these banksters, it turns out that J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller were really, the Wall Street bad boys of the late 1800s and early 1900s, were really actually satellites of the Rothschilds. John D. Got his seed money for Standard Oil from the Rothschilds, and J.P. Morgan was bailed out by the Bank of England at the instigation of the Rothschilds. And when he died, it turned out that J.P. Morgan himself wasn't that wealthy. Apparently, most of his wealth was actually owned by the Rothschilds. So they are the players. They have been for over 200 years, going back to Weishaupt and the Illuminati and the Napoleonic Wars that they profited so greatly from. They are at the top of this Illuminati New World Order pyramid, and the Goy members, if you will, are usually the Freemasons, who are operating at a secondary level and getting their biscuits from the Rothschild elite, who are at the very top of it. Although at the very top, because you and I as Christians, Sean, know we're dealing with spiritual warfare. At the very top is Satan himself. But it seems like, as far as I've ever learned, the Rothschilds are the highest human rank in this hierarchy of warfare.
Alrighty. Well, and we're not going to leave the British monarchy out of this. Certainly there's powers throughout the world. The Vatican, of course. Many people, and more increasingly myself, do believe that all roads lead to the Vatican as well. I've never seen so many world leaders bow to anyone like they show reverence to the Pope. So one wonders how much power the Vatican still has to this very day. But yes, the Rothschilds, the House of Windsor with the British royalty, and MI6, MI5 up to its neck in false flag operations itself, 7/7 just being one of many. So it is a spider's web of deep state and corrupt government apparatus at work against humanity. And I think we can round out the discussion nicely here, James, with your recent article, Vaccination Visuals. As many of the listeners know, so many of us have been affected. Specifically, those of us that have teenagers and teenage boys, many of us around the country have been affected negatively by vaccines when we didn't know any better in the late 90s, early 2000s about the hellish ingredients, including mercury, thimerosal, the preservative in the childhood vaccinations. Many of us are suffering with children with autism or on the autism scale, Asperger's, developmental issues because of, many of us believe, the vaccination program, which I now call chemical weapons delivery systems. And let's talk a little bit about your interesting article, Vaccination Visuals. I really appreciated you posting that.
And I appreciate you giving me maybe 5 minutes here. We'll just discuss this. This would have been the topic of a discussion had these Syrian airstrikes not occurred for you and me today. In my book, Truth is a Lonely Warrior, which is a primer on the New World Order, I do have a very extensive chapter on vaccines, but that's all writing. And people today are very visual oriented, and I've been on Twitter for a long time and picked up a lot of good videos. And so what I did is I said I want to make something that's very video friendly. We're in a visual age, and so this article consists almost entirely of memes, cartoons, charts, quote banners, and especially short videos. I don't want to put long videos in there like an hour or 2 hours and people turn it off. But these are videos that explain to people what's been going on in the world of vaccination. And I start out with doctors. You have clips from doctors explaining what's going on and how they're the link to autism. And then from doctors, we go to other medical professionals, former Merck salesmen and registered nurses. And by the way, Sean, I'm a registered nurse myself. And I first sensed that something was wrong with vaccination back in the early 90s. I was working at a major Boston area hospital, and we're told we were all to get 3 hepatitis B injections so we wouldn't get hepatitis B. And even the housekeepers were to get these injections. I said, why the housekeepers? They don't even have patient contact. And I said to myself, something is wrong here that needs to be investigated. That was the first red flag alert for me. Okay, but after the doctors and the medical professionals, we get to the most important part in my blog post, which is clips of the parents themselves. And there's some of the people you see in the movie Vaxxed, which I highly recommend people download and watch. One of the best ones to watch is by the district attorney of San Antonio, Nico LaHood, who his son got, and his wife, their son got autism right after getting his vaccines. And he handled it from an evidence point of view as a prosecuting criminal district attorney. And from there we go to the polio myth. We talk about the Disney scare, remember the measles scare. That was prompted, obviously, by the fact that right before then, there had been a CDC whistleblower named William Thompson who revealed that the link between the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella, and autism had been suppressed by the CDC. And that there's another section in my article called, it's about the links between the CDC, the FDA, and their cozy relationship with Big Pharma. In fact, Julie, what's her name? Julie Gerberding was head of the CDC, and then she went on to become head of Merck's vaccine division, and she recently sold $2.3 million worth of Merck stock.
Yeah,
so
of course she did.
She's going quite well.
Yeah, this really gets my blood boiling because this is what I talk about. This is the revolving door of absolute fascism, and how these devilish monsters can sleep at night with their $2.2 million. I don't give a crap how much money you have. You're not going to have 2 pennies to rub together when you go to meet your maker. And these people are in the business of hurting children, and they know it. And by the way, that Disney false flag, right, that Disney operation to scare everybody in California, that was rolled out right around the time that Jerry Brown was trying very hard to push through, against the will of the people, SB 277 for mandatory vaccinations in the state of California. And it does not matter if you're it does not matter if you're going to homeschool your kids or send them to a private school or a public school. In any of those cases, if you do not now give your kids the mandatory hellish needle of the government state, right, the government love needle, you will get a knock on your door from the fascists. That is now law in California. And again, United Airlines, if you don't stand up, they'll drag you off the flight. If you don't stand up soon, they'll all be dragging us off the flight. I cannot believe that SB 277 did not force the people of California, the right-minded thinking ones anyway, into a revolution against that fascist, nightmarish, tyrannical government. That state government in Sacramento needs to be burned to the ground. I say it figuratively, I say it politically, but they need to be brought to justice because they are out of control. Because if they can force you and your children to get a shot, they can force you and your children to die because who knows what's in those shots.
And just to make a point here, they're talking about the concern about measles. After that, in 2015, after the Disney scare, there were 200 cases of measles. It's a normal childhood illness. I had it. It goes away. But autism, which had reached 1 in 45 children in 2015, that lasts for a lifetime. And yet somehow we're supposed to think that the measles are more important. Come on. I mean, it doesn't. We're asked to think of this irrationally. Well, the rest of my just to quickly summarize the rest of this vaccine visuals post, we cover SIDS, Gardasil. The HPV vaccine, the one that even if a kid's not having sexual activity, they should get it, right? And children ended up in wheelchairs.
Yeah, but now I want to say something about that, too, because that one really ticks me off. That's Merck, and we know a little girl in our neighborhood who no longer lives here who's a competitive figure skater, and her parents are both... Listen to this, man. Her dad was a doctor. I know him well. I'm still friends with him. He doesn't live here anymore. They moved to the East Coast. Played poker with him more than a dozen times, 24 times. Great guy named Dave. His daughter was a competitive figure skater. His mom was an assistant anesthesiologist. They were informed people. They gave her the HPV vaccine. And on the third round, she suffered tremendous immune issues, body issues, inflammatory issues. It ended her figure skating career, and it woke them up to how devilish these vaccines are, even though I had told them previously about vaccines and that they ought to do their research. This HPV vaccine, this Gardasil vaccine is being pushed on little girls. Anybody listening, if you have a little girl, you need to get in your doctor's face when that little girl is 10, 11, or 12, and they are pushing this vaccine on your little girl, which is, by the way, not on the list of absolutely mandatory vaccines. I believe at this point it is still optional, although maybe that's different in California.
They're going to try and give it to babies, make it mandatory for babies.
And they want to give it to boys now. Here's the thing. That piece of garbage vaccine is hurting people, is hurting little girls. These little girls are not even sexually active, which is the only way you can even get any of the viruses that lead to HPV or cervical cancer. And they want to push it on these little girls, and Merck knew in the trials that it was damaging girls, and it even killed a few, and it got approved. This is the revolving door of absolute nightmarish despotism and fascism, what you just cited about that woman having worked for Merck or having worked for the FDA or whatever, and it's a revolving door, and now she's cashing out $2.2 million in blood money.
And you'll see Merck salesmen exposing Merck in my post vaccine visuals. The final bit is on Alzheimer's, and just to mention a personal note, Sean, I actually experienced vaccine injury myself early in life, which I talk about in an appendix to Truth of the Lonely Warrior. But my mother faithfully got a flu shot every year in her 80s from her doctor, and she had Alzheimer's so bad she couldn't remember what happened 10 seconds ago for the last 4 years of her life. But my father, who didn't trust doctors, he never got a flu shot, and at the age of 99, he could still describe Charles Lindbergh flying overhead in 1927. His memory was crystal clear at the age of 99. Now, they were different people, different genetics. That doesn't prove anything, but you'll find this kind of story repeated over and over again because the flu shots, the CDC admits this, still have not only aluminum in them, but mercury. And mercury is deadly. And as you get older, you can't tolerate it. You get as your body starts to break down from aging, it gets less and less able to resist the toxicity of the mercury. So you wonder where all the Alzheimer's is, where the ADHD and the autism, all these mysterious diseases that they give a name to. It's all come of one place. And you put it well, Sean. It's chemical warfare on the people, and it's being made mandatory chemical warfare. But this article, I hope that people will use it as a resource. It sums a lot, and like it's all visual. It's all videos, banners, cartoons, memes. Makes it easy, but it's a good place to start for people who are looking for a reference point, and that's at jamesperloff.com.
Yeah, and it's a very important article. It's a great way to wake up people with children. And I'll just say this about the flu shot. For those of you with parents, getting up there in age like mine, they don't listen. It's hard to break through to these people, and they're going to go get their flu shot every year, but you should educate them on this. James, my understanding of the flu shot is that if you go into the doctor and they give you the vial and they stick the needle in, it's sort of the vial that contains many, many flu shots. So they're going to stick the needle in. It's sort of the reusable vial. It's the vial,
right.
the mass vaccination vial. That one has the thimerosal, right? Because it's supposedly said, right. If you the multi-dose, if you get the single dose, which I also would not recommend. At least I'm told the single dose does not contain the mercury because they just give it to the person and throw the needle away. It's insane that they put mercury in this stuff. I'm living through a lot of issues because of, I think, vaccine damage in our family, James, and my heart goes out to anybody listening that is also suffering through similar issues. It's very, very sad, and I truly do believe that those people at Merck and the FDA and those people at these other vaccine companies that make these hideous vaccines that are hurting people, as evidenced by the documentary Vaxxed, these people are living on blood money, literally, and they are going to have to make amends for it at some point, if not in this lifetime, in the next.
They're not making amends for it in this lifetime, Sean. And one reason for that is, there are clips about this in my post, but if people don't know it, the vaccine manufacturers are completely immune from any lawsuit for any damages they cause. Unlike a drug, you cannot sue manufacturer of a vaccine. You have to go to vaccine court, and if you do get damages for your autistic child, it comes from the American taxpayers. And that's why Merck and these other countries companies have so little incentive to make sure these vaccines are safe, because they cannot be sued even for 1 penny. And it also motivates them to press vaccines to the point where I think it's something like 69 mandatory vaccinations by the time you leave high school. By making vaccinations mandatory, imagine the billions of dollars of profit that are there in hundreds of millions of doses of mandatory vaccine for which you can never be sued. So there's a whole lot to this. People do need to be educated, and before you vaccinate, do your research.
Yeah, that's right. And they're also building up a wonderful, robust population of sick people as these people age and need to take advantage of the Western hospitals. It's how it's a good way of keeping the hospitals full, James. James, again, shout out your website for folks so they can read that article and all of your original work and buy your excellent books.
Sure, it's jamesperloff.com, and Perloff is Perloff. And my latest book, again, is called Truth is a Lonely Warrior, which talks about false flags, the Federal Reserve, the deep state, the Council on Foreign Relations, Zionism, chapter on 9/11, vaccines, weather control. It's an A to Z primer on the New World Order.
Yeah, and it's a great book. You're kind enough to send me one. And guys, if you want to wake up other folks, loved ones in your life, to the fact that the elite don't want us to know that God is real and Darwinism is nothing but a misdirect to keep you separated from your Creator, watch our excellent interview called "The Elite Don't Want You to Know God is Real." It has more than 1 million views. I'm very proud of that one. James, excellent work on your books, dismantling Darwinism.
That is part of the New World Order agenda. Their attack on Christianity includes trying to convince people scientifically that God doesn't exist. And as you mentioned, that's actually been the number one watched interview, the one we did on SGT Report. And I've had emails from around the world of people who told me they came to faith as a result of that interview you and I did. We went over the evidence for a designer and against the idea that we came about by chance out of ancient primordial slime, as the Darwinists would say.
Yep, that's right. All right, well, I'm very proud of that one, too, because, God is using us in mysterious ways, James. We're just the messengers here, guys, and we want to thank each and every one of you for listening. We're more than an hour into this, so for those of you who have stuck with us, thank you so much. We very much appreciate you. We wouldn't be here without you guys, and more that's true since Google definitely wants to shut down challenging content. So
clamping down on the fake news.
Yeah, the fake news meme. Everything's fake unless it comes from CNN, folks. If you want the real news, I guess turn to CNN or open the Washington Post or New York Times. In lieu of that, you may want to check us out at sgtreport.com for real news. The antidote to corporate propaganda. James, I came up with that slogan about 6-7 years ago. That seems to be spot on to this day. Real news 24/7. Thanks so much for watching, guys. God bless.
God bless.
Trump has no philosophical core. He's not a libertarian. He's actually an authoritarian. His philosophical approach to things is classical fascist. I'm afraid that he might get us involved in a serious war with China, or he's not getting out of the Middle East.